The best bits.
Second-rate show.
Juggernaut of a podcast.
Where we watch
Fluff.
and see if we like it. One, please.
Hello and welcome to the Best Bits Second Rate Show, where we flash back to a random week of release and give a second chance to a film that we didn't see the first time. This is your host Will, and as always I am joined by Kevin. Hello Kevin, how are you?
What you want?
I want you here with me, Kevin. That's all I want. That's
Again,
all I want.
For another one of these films, okay? Fine. Hello, Will.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I am having a ball.
It's the end of summer, or closing in on the end of summer, and we are going through these films that we've never seen the first time, and it's an education. That's all I'd say.
13th of August. It's the dead of summer, I would say.
Yeah. This week we are going back in time.
Shit.
And I got the spin of the wheel. And last time out, we were in 1984. And when we spun the wheel the last time, we got the next year, 1985. So we're going back to August 10th-ish, 1985. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that, Kevin?
Yeah. Interesting year. I didn't know much about this year, but I looked into what was happening in the world in 1985, and I've got a few tidbits here to share with you.
Oh.
So Madonna was number one in the UK and Irish charts with Into the Groove. It was the summer of Live Aid. Live Aid was huge that summer and making loads of money for the Ethiopian famine crisis. Care Bears were dominating and sort of sucking up all the oxygen from Disney. In the box office, you had a lot of re-releases. Re-releases for Ghostbusters. E.T. had made 40 million.
Oh, that was 82. Jesus, they re-released it in 85. Wow.
Yeah, made 40 million. Michael J. Fox was in his supremacy because Back to the Future was a monumental hit that year. At one stage, he held the number one and number two spots with Teen Wolf.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In Ireland, they brought in the one-drink driving law, which was announced on this date in 1985.
What does that mean? You can only drive with one drink in your hand. Is that what it is? You can't drive with two drinks?
Yes,
what was the law? Okay.
That was the law. You could have 1 pint as long as you had the other hand on the stick shift.
And no mixers.
No
mixers.
Nope.
No chasers. Right.
Nope. And Rock Hudson was dying of AIDS.
Ah.
That was making the news. In the UK, you had the first heart-lung transplant was carried out in Middlesex. The patient was a 3-year-old named Jamie Gavin.
Wow.
After just 7 months and fewer than 17,000 units, he pulled through. And about a week from this date in 1985, a massive air disaster was going to take place in Manchester, where 55 people were going to be killed when British Air Tours Boeing 737 burst into flames after takeoff.
Wow.
So it was a tumultuous year. I was looking through the Irish Times front page, and it was fascinating to see that a lot of the headlines were like talking about the Anglo-Irish talks and about what could be brokered. Meanwhile, there was like stories in the sidebar of like bombs going off on trains in the UK and stuff. So it was a crazy time in Irish history. But yeah.
You were probably too young for Live Aid. You're probably too young to remember it, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I've no memory of Live Aid.
I can remember it being on the television and knowing it was something really significant because it dominated the broadcast for the day, but also being really pissed off with it because I wanted to watch my programs. I wanted to watch my stories, and this music stuff was on, and I was just not having it. It was just like, I don't remember what I was watching, but I remember wondering where my thing was.
It could have been Who's the Boss or Cagney and Lacey, because they were the big TV shows at the time.
Big Cagney and Lacey fan back when I was 6.
Yeah. No, the children's TV was Inspector Gadget and the Bugs Bunny Show and the Chipmunks. So,
oh my God, I ate all that up. Do you want to know what was in the top 10 of the US box office of that week, Kevin?
Hit me.
In number 10 spot was Cocoon. In number 9 spot was Real Genius with Val Kilmer. I remember that and enjoyed that film. In number 8 was Fright Night. I enjoyed that too. In number 7, National Lampoon's European Vacation. Ooh, yeah, ooh la la.
Seen them all so far.
Same. In number 6, Rental Summer, which I don't know what that is.
No, never heard of that.
Yeah. In number 5, Year of the Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
In 4th place, The Return of the Living Dead.
Wow.
In 3rd place, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And I'm skipping 2nd because in number 1 spot was Back to the Future, which everyone and his mother, sister, brother, uncle, and cat have seen.
Mm-hmm.
But the film we're picking tonight...
Is it the one that's in the title of the episode?
It's the one that's in the title of the episode. It is 1985's Volunteers, which both of us hadn't seen. I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of what in the heck Volunteers is, Kevin.
I would say you probably might want to play the trailer.
You know what I'm going to do before that? You know what I'm going to do right now? Why not play the trailer?
It is our responsibility today to live in our own world and to identify the needs.
I need $28,000 to pay off a gambling debt, or else I'm a dead man.
You've been a constant source of embarrassment, irritation, ever since your mother and I brought you home that day from the orphanage.
Orphanage? Father, I am not adopted. I am your son.
I know, but please allow me that little fantasy.
I need the money.
No.
I've got to take the place on this plane. You see, some very dangerous and primitive people are after me.
You can't. This is the Peace Corps. Traveling halfway around the world to help a bunch of half-starved, oppressed human beings.
So this is hell.
No turning back now, huh? Tom Tuttle, Tacoma, Washington.
You mean you've just been trying to go to bed with me?
Well, I think I put in the hours, don't you? It's not that I can't help these people. It's just that I don't want to.
Bridge! Build bridge! Bridge, good. All right, this is good.
Why do you guys think you can come here and turn everything upside down?
Blackjack is the game. Place bet.
Opium is my business. The bridge mean more traffic. More traffic mean more business. More business mean more money. More money mean more power.
Do you know where you are? My guess is I'm in the clutches of the angry Pink Menace. You will be brainwashed. Me? America's son? Ha! That will be a challenge. You bet. We must always be on our guard. Sure, we'll lose a lot of snooze time, but that's okay. We'll catch up after the revolution's over. That's enough, Tom.
You can't be part of this if you're doing it for yourself.
What have you learned, Dorothy?
Well, Volunteers is a comedy written by David Isaacs and Kevin Levine.
It's written by Ken Levine, because Ken Levine is somebody that I used to follow for a long, long time on Blogspot. He had a very popular blog because he was a sitcom writer. He wrote on Cheers and he wrote on Frasier. So as soon as his name came up, I was like, oh, it's your man that did the blog, Ken Levine.
And David Isaacs was his writing partner through all those sitcom years as well. The two of them have been involved in a huge amount of projects. It's The Simpsons and all that sort of stuff.
Rich.
I would imagine. Incredibly rich.
Yeah.
It was also directed by Nicholas Meyer, who did
Wrath of Khan
and Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, which are two of the best original cast Star Trek movies, I would argue. It stars Tom Hanks, John Candy, and future Mrs. Tom Hanks, Rita Wilson. So the basic plot of this film is it's set in 1962. We have Tom Hanks plays Lawrence Bourne III, who is a spoiled rich kid and is just graduating Yale with a gambling debt of $28,000. After his father, Lawrence Bourne Jr., played by George Plimpton, refuses to pay his debt, he escapes his angry creditors by trading places with his college roommate, jumping on a Peace Corps flight to Thailand. And on the plane, he meets Tom Tuttle from Tacoma, played by John Candy, and the beautiful down-to-earth Beth Wexler, played by Rita Wilson. Once they are embedded in a remote village in Thailand, they are tasked with building a bridge across a vast river. Lawrence befriends a local who speaks English. His name is At Toon, but they soon discover that the CIA, the communists, and a drug lord are eyeing up the bridge for their own gains. So that's the general gist of the plot.
Can I translate that for our Cork listeners?
Go on.
So Tom Hanks is a pure ball hopper, and he's tricky like, and he dodges on a debt, and he's loaded like his old man, but he's been robbing the conjuring box, and his old man won't give him the steam off his piss. So when these bowsers show up to dance on his head, Hanks legs it and bums a flight to Thailand. And sure, he's on the airplane, sat beside this headbanger John Candy, and it's then when he twigs that he's joined the Peace Corps. And Hanks now thought that he was going to be bamming out on the beach in Bangkok and feeking bures. And so, like, he's out there dossing around, eating like douchey, and the Thai shades call him up, dig the head off him, and tell him that they'll funt him up and down Pana unless he bangs out an unreal, pure decent bridge like. And he's like, no bother. No bother, by me old Bure will shift the face off me for that. And that's the film.
Wow! Oh my God! You should do those audio descriptions that they have in in screenings for people with visual impairment. That would be incredible, Kevin. And here comes Tom Hanks. He's going over the bridge now. When he's that's my kind of limerick. My limerick accent. Kevin, very good. What were you? First of all, I want to get your expectations for this film. What did you when you learned that it was Tom Hanks, John Candy, directed by Nicholas Meyer? What did you expect this film to be?
I didn't know any of those things until I hit play. So I go in so blind that the opening credits just reveal what I need to know. And I'll tell you what, I loved the opening credits of this film. Mm-hmm. I miss opening credits in general when it comes to movies. I'm sort of getting a little tired of every film just starting in media res and having to play catch up.
Yeah.
I do miss sort of the long lead in with a good song, and this one has a sort of a historical context. And I think that orientated me a little slower than most, because I didn't realize that this was set in the 60s until, a good half an hour into it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
No, I had no idea. And then, of course, it made sense to me because it's all 60s, newsreel stuff that opens the film.
Right.
My expectations for it, I had no idea what to expect. I knew that if I didn't know of this film and it starred John Candy and Tom Hanks, I thought this is going to be pretty poor because it would have had a bigger footprint than it had. I'd never heard of this film before until you mentioned it. It's a film that sort of shows off that era of Tom Hanks where he was playing a lot of cads, and he perfects it in some other 80s comedies. But in this one, it took a while for me to warm up to him. So my expectations, anything goes with this mini-series of podcasts. Yeah. What about you? Why did you pick this film?
Why I picked this film was because I got that weekend and I just scrolled down through the list and I saw the title Volunteers, clicked on it and saw that it was a film starring Tom Hanks and John Candy and Rita Wilson that I'd never heard of. And I saw the poster and it was...
Isn't that strange?
It was one of those Drew Struzan posters, and it's a beautiful poster of the three of them locked arm in arm, marching up the side of a grassy hill with this beautiful bridge, stretched across the river behind them. And I went, oh, I want to see this. I really want to see what this is. But I kind of had the same opinion as you, where I went, if I haven't heard of this, it's never been on my radar, then something's up.
That usually happens if the film is very American specific. If it's sort of like I don't know, like a softball league or something. Those films don't tend to travel.
Yeah.
But this one, it's international facing. It's about the Peace Corps, and Tom Hanks and John Candy. I think they'd done Splash prior to this.
It was, the year beforehand they did Splash. And Tom Hanks that was a huge hit. So Tom got hired. He got a load of job offers. And he had 2 films out this summer. He'd actually, the Man with the Red Shoe, I think that's the name of it.
Yeah.
That was a complete flop for him. This one did a little bit better. It made 20 million. But I'd say, couldn't find out the budget of this, but the budget was definitely over 10 million. So I don't know, I think it might have broke even.
So having those 2 guys in this film after Splash, you'd think that it would have had a bigger cultural footprint.
Well, apparently, a lot of Americans saw it a lot because it was on HBO constantly over there. It was one of those films that was on HBO back in the 80s.
It's a spoof, I take it.
Is it a spoof? That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's this strange hybrid where it has spoof elements, because you bring that up. There was 2 specific moments in the film where I went, oh, that's a spoof joke. There was one moment where he was escaping his debtors, and they were chasing each other by map, where their 2 lines were going across the map. And when they came to the airport, Tom Hanks's car drove through an actual physical map, and I went, oh, that's a kind of funny visual gag. And then the second spoof moment was when Tom Hanks was being this bodyguard, this female bodyguard who's like a kind of a sidekick with killer nails, is about to kill Tom Hanks. When she speaks, they have subtitles, and Tom Hanks and his sidekick at tune can't understand her, and they look at the subtitles on the screen and know what she's saying. And those are the 2 overt spoof gags.
Yeah, which is a joke from Loaded Weapon. Yeah, when the guy who they've swindled out of money is chasing them, and he jumps onto the front of the plane and he clings to it, and the traffic controller is like saying, we got a guy on the plane, and he falls off, and it's like, no, it's fine. I thought, yeah, this is a spoof. And, you know, after watching the film, I did a little bit of Googling to make sure that it's the same Ken Levine, and I found a blog post from him where he talks about the movie, and he did say that the film had been in development since the 80s, the early 80s.
Yeah.
And it was not a comedy. And at the last minute, they did another draft on spec. And on spec means that they just wrote it without being paid. It was a speculative draft. They decided to chuck in like a load of comedy. And yeah, I think it feels like that. It feels like a first draft, even though this was probably the last draft it did.
That makes so much sense when you say that it was drastically changed at the very last minute, because it feels neither here nor there. It feels like it could have been a serious film in one way, because you have the element of these this kind of trio of young Americans going over to a foreign land and them having to integrate into the community and do something to benefit the community, but having these external forces. And you could say, oh, that could be a straight narrative in its own right. But some of the scenes, it just feels out of balance. It feels out of whack between the comedy and the drama.
There's a line that is said at the end where it sort of brings into focus the arc of Tom Hanks' character, and it's what Rita Wilson says to him. And I thought that's a good line, and it's a line for a different film. It works in the context of the story, but they didn't do enough to service where they take it. I mean, it really is a riff on the Bridge over River Kwai. I mean, there's a moment where John Candy even whistles the theme tune from Bridge on River Kwai. But that line, I don't know if I should tell you what that line is, but it's...
Do say the line. Yeah, go on.
I know you think the right thing can be done for the wrong reason, but for me, motives are important. You can't be part of this if you're doing it for yourself. And that's the moment where Tom Hanks is deciding to do something. He's a very selfish character, and at this moment, she's confronting him, and he's going to be selfless and do something for other people for the first time in his life. And that's a nice line. And that's a nice sort of arc for a character. But I will say that I was struggling with his character in this movie because he is just a dislikable, selfish cad. And his wit and his charm is just coming off really smarmy and clingy and very early 80s. And they do a thing in early 80s films where they present you with 2 terrible choices, which is like you can root for the smarmy melt, which is Tom Hanks, or you can root for his rival, which is a psychotic creep. And that's how they sort of get you to like the Tom Hanks character. Yeah. And that for me just doesn't work, because, you know, I want the characters in a story to achieve something, and for me to if I don't relate to them, if I don't root for them, then I need to be able to relate to them as fascinating human beings. And in a movie like this, where it's juvenile comedy, if it's not funny, then it's just not working. And so I was like watching this as more of an oddity, and was thinking, oh, so that's what Tom Hanks did in the summer of 1984.
The winter, yeah. They shot it the previous winter. I'm
in Mexico.
Well, I found, I read Mexico, but then I read that, they shot it in Venezuela and they actually shot some in Thailand as well. So maybe they did some second units out over there.
It doesn't look like Mexico.
It doesn't look like it. Did look like it was in the jungle and such. I'm in the same boat as you because I found Tom Hanks's accent to be a bit of a hurdle. He puts on a very waspish kind of like almost like a JFK type accent, which he said that he based the accent on he's the guy who plays his father in the film, George Plimpton, and he mimicked him. And I thought that was a big hurdle when listening to Tom Hanks speak. He just had this very affected way of speaking, and I just didn't like listening to him.
The minute that he started speaking, I Googled to see, did he do the voice of the brain gremlin in Gremlins 2?
Oh, yeah.
Because he has a long-standing friendship with Joe Dante. And it sounds very much like that, but no, that was Tony Randall.
Oh.
But if you haven't seen the film and you're trying to figure out, well, what does he sound like? Yeah, he sounds very hoity-toity and affected, but it's not a very convincing accent.
And I had a thought as well watching the film.
Why am I watching this?
Why? Well, no. I was watching it. I was quite curious watching the film. There was aspects about it I did enjoy. I do feel, I've said this before in another thing, but I think there might have been they could have done better casting. I think someone like a Chevy Chase or a Bill Murray might have brought more to the role or suited the character more than Tom Hanks did, and could have brought more to actual specific scenes and maybe to lift up the comedy just by the way they are physically on camera at times. But I still don't think it saves the film from not being funny enough in its scenes, because quite often in scenes they will have one visual gag where it might even be the first visual gag in a movie, in the scene, but then the scene kind of trails off without any other kind of supporting jokes, and as a result the comedy just kind of falls flat and kind of just lays there.
It gets kind of better towards the end when Tom Hanks is basically strong-armed into building this bridge so that the local drug dealers who are in charge, I think they're either the local government or what have you, they want to build this bridge so that they can have a quicker supply of drugs. And when the CIA guy is revealed, he's like masquerading as a Peace Corps supervisor or whatever you'd call those guys. When he's revealed to be a CIA guy, he goes full psychotic, creep, and he kidnaps Rita Wilson's character, and Tom Hanks reluctantly goes on a rescue mission to get her back with the sidekick character, who is my favorite character in the movie. I looked up that actor, Geddes Watanabe. I looked up his career to see what he'd done, and he's had a long, long TV career. He's kind of like a grown-up version of Short Round, and their sort of escapades to rescue her, it sort of lifts up and it becomes a little bit like a cheapy version of Romancing the Stone. But the prior two acts are knockabout comedy with a lot of tired sitcom-y kind of gags, and Tom Hanks not in his comfort zone, and John Candy not being able to sort of sell this neurotic busybody type of character in a way where they're so eccentric they're adorable or lovable. Like John Candy's played a similar type of guy in Planes, Trains and Automobiles, but in this he's just kind of like unfunny, and I don't think he's able to make anything out of the scenes or the character that he's been lumbered with. And
his character did contribute to one of the funniest moments in the film for me, because he's this kind of completely nationalistic, completely adoring of the American flag and will die for the American flag. He gets kidnapped by the communists, and which I enjoy. He's vanished for ages, and when we find him, he's been tied to a stake, and the communists are kind of saying, he's singing like this, I can't remember, some sort of like, Yale song or whatever it was, and the communists are like going, we'll brainwash him, and they tell John Candy,
an itsy bitsy teeny weeny yellow book. No.
And what happens is he says, you're not going to brainwash me, and they do a hard cut to literally him wearing the communist cap and wearing the jacket, and he's like, we must kill the imperial dogs, and he's completely transformed and brainwashed into becoming a communist. And I actually thought that was one of my favourite turns in the film.
I love John Candy, and for some reason he just didn't work for me in this. Nobody worked for me except for Geddes. I thought he was fun.
He had one of the funniest little quirks in the film where he calls Tom Hanks's character asshole. There's a moment where Tom Hanks is floating down a river and he's not looking too good for him, and you just hear a tune from the bank going asshole, asshole. And I did laugh out loud when he was going asshole and dickhead and whatnot. Kevin, did you catch the egregious product placement scene in this film?
Yeah, and I know that they got a lot of shit for that. There's a moment where Rita Wilson is offered a can of Coke. She starts doing a kind of a commercial for Coke, how great it is and how wonderful it is. And that didn't go down well with American critics, even though, from what I read on Ken Levine's blog, that was always in the script and it was never flagged up at any stage. Even when it was in development at MGM, before it got picked up by TriStar. And they put the script, MGM put it into turnaround, and then TriStar took it on board, and TriStar had a connection with Coca-Cola. But yeah, it didn't bother me. I just thought the whole movie was sort of an odd comedy, so it just felt like another odd joke that wasn't landing.
It was. I honestly felt it was one of those incredibly egregious product. It felt like an egregious product placement because I think Tom Hanks is even going, "What do you want?"
It felt like a Bond film.
Cherry, yeah, for not a Bond film. Only they would be advertising watches. What do you want? Vanilla, cherry, whatever it is. Even the way it's shot, you could have just lifted that scene and just played that as an advert on TV. That little one scene, and the way she melts over the prospect of having a Coke. I think Ken Levine said he would have had a lot less hassle if he just replaced Coke with
heroin,
offering her weed or something like that, and everything would have been a lot easier. But yeah, I genuinely thought I was taken out of the film at that moment when Jesus, was Coke behind us in any way? And sure enough, yeah, there was a Coke connection to the movie.
So were you ever in the film?
Was I ever in the film?
You were taken out of the film, so I'm just wondering,
was I ever engaged in the film?
Yeah.
I was kind of similar to you, Kevin, where I found myself wanting to like this film. I wanted to enjoy it, particularly because it's got Tom Hanks and he's so great. But I was in a similar position where I never for a second, got on board with his character, his depiction of the character. I really didn't find the humor didn't come across at any stage. Really, I found it to be long enough.
It's long. It's an hour and 40 odd minutes. It's the longest film we've done so far.
Yeah, they had three external forces in the plot. Like they had the communists, as we already described, they had the drug lord, and they had the CIA, who all want this bridge. And I just thought, like, that's you don't need that many external forces looking for this thing.
It just made me want to watch the bridge on River Kwai.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, even John Candy's last final words before he blows up the bridge is the exact same words as Obi-Wan Kenobi says in Bridge to River Kwai.
Alec Guinness will.
Yeah, oh no, his real name is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Ben Kenobi.
And also I was wondering, did it look like the jungle? Was that the jungle? You've been in the jungle, haven't you?
No, I've never been in a jungle.
Oh, I thought you were in a jungle.
I've been in a rainforest. I've never been in a jungle.
Oh, okay. But in Thailand.
Where do you think I went backpacking? The Amazon?
Well, I don't know where you said you were in a rainforest. Well, I've been in a rainforest here up in Donegal as well.
And you call them jungles. The jungles of Donegal.
Well, what would you call where they are? Is it a rainforest where they're living?
Thailand.
Yeah, but is that a rainforest?
It looked like just a river side. It didn't look... The whole movie looks like it takes place in an acre of land.
I want to give you a great quote from Nicholas Meyer, right, about the elephants, because they had to get elephants in to create authenticity, right? Nicholas Meyer said he wanted two elephants to appear in the film because on the grounds that two elephants look like Thailand, while one elephant makes it look like you can't afford two elephants. I think that's funny. If you have two elephants,
I found it a very strange film for him to follow up Star Trek Wrath of Khan with. Why go from a great action adventure story to an odd spoof? Did this affect his career?
Like he didn't make that many feature films. Nicholas Meyer. I think his most successful films were
Wrath of Khan
and Star Trek.
Undiscovered, yeah. Wrath of Khan is really well directed. This it looked underlit. That could be an after effect of it not being given the love that it needed for its transfers, DVD and Blu-ray down the years. But the film looked quite underlit, and I kept looking at scenes and thinking, why has he placed a camera there? It just looks so sort of like student movie-ish, where you're covering it like a TV sitcom stage.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel very cinematic. Comedy is timing, and there was a lot of sort of static shots, and I just thought, you're not really getting the rat-a-tat-tat rhythm here.
That was exactly it. There was there were too many wide shots, and just scenes just kind of hung around. They just hung around.
Did you notice any sparks between Rita Wilson and Tom Hanks, seeing as this is the movie where they fell in love?
I can't say that I just saw sparks, but I'm just glad to know that this was the film that kind of rekindled their romance, or that this is the film that's started.
Oh, really? Were they together before?
They'd met when Tom Hanks was doing a sitcom. She guest starred in one of the episodes. So they were in relationships at the time, and so when they met on this, they were single, and this is what, they got together on this, and 3 years later they were married. So that's I think that's a nice aspect of this thing. Did you know anything? Do you know that the Peace Corps? Did you know anything about the Peace Corps before this, actually, Kevin?
No, I didn't really.
Yeah, well, it was started by JFK. Well, one of the founders was JFK, and what's his name, Mr. Shriver. Maria Shriver, Arnold Schwarzenegger's wife. Her
ex-wife.
Dad, ex-wife, her dad, and.
Okay.
When the script came to Mr. Shriver, I can't remember his first name, he had loads of notes, basically.
Clive
wanted this.
Clive Shriver.
He wanted the Peace Corps name taken out of it. He said it was an absolute desecration of everything that the Peace Corps stood for.
And I don't know anything about the Peace Corps, but he's right.
Was there anything about this film that you enjoyed, Kevin, aside from, its ending?
I liked that I don't have to watch it again.
That's an invalid answer. That's an invalid answer. I want a genuine answer of some.
I like Geddes Watanabe, and I am kind of turning my nose up at Hollywood for having the most charming, quick-witted, funny, charismatic actor in the film, and he is playing against Tom Hanks, A-lister, the most beloved actor of his generation, and John Candy, one of the most memorable comedic actors who dominated the 80s. He's playing opposite both those guys, and he's stealing every scene. And he just wasn't a name actor to me. And he should have been. He should have had his own franchise. He should have had his own leading man roles. He shouldn't have been, consigned to being a sidekick for the rest of his career, or a bit part actor. So I watched this and thought, that guy is great. Why have I not seen that guy in 50 other movies where he's the lead? And that bothered me. So I'm glad that I got exposed to Geddes Watanabe, but he's a wonderful actor and he should have done more. And anytime I reacted positively with the film, it was because he did something or said something.
Yeah, he was great. And also, one of the big kind of negative marks of this film for me was there was a lot of icky racial humor in this as well. And I know it's of its time as well. You can kind of say that, but there's times when they will throw it a go.
So you felt guilty while you were laughing.
This is the thing. Maybe back in the 1980s, 6-year-old me.
Cut that.
But maybe the 6-year-old me back in the 1980s might have went, "Oh, that's a funny joke," and maybe that's a part of why the film doesn't play well now as well, because so many of those gags are kind of like broad racial gags as well.
Yeah, comedy can be quite distancing because it doesn't tend to comedy tends to comment on where we are at that time and poke fun. And when we move past that, when you look back, it can be quite odd to see what we laughed at and what we thought was funny. So yeah, any that feels bullying or mean-spirited, I think it doesn't really work anymore. And again, Tom Hanks' character in this, if he had been a selfish asshole who was fronting, who was putting on a facade in order to get the approval of his dad, or that he was quite soft-hearted and he needed to put on a tough exterior because he has a reputation to upkeep. If we had gotten any insight into that, then it would have allowed me to go on a journey with him where I'm seeing somebody slowly have their persona dismantled, and I would have been rooting for him to have a sort of an epiphany where he realizes that if he wants to get the girl, he needs to be his authentic self. And that is not anywhere in the story. He's just a smarmy, rich cad, a womanizer who has never worked a day in his life and is swindling people out of money. And they're black people and they're minorities, and all of these little things peppered over this character just make him really unlikable. And they're throwing all this wit at him and all these sort of like jocular one-liners, but it's just making me dislike him even more. So,
there was a moment towards the end of the film where I think the film, the writers and the filmmakers were consciously aware that Tom Hanks wasn't going to have an arc, because there was a moment where he should have a kind of a, where Tom Hanks's character seems like he should have a realization of the soul, and Toon comes in and says, "Oh, what did we learn, Dorothy?" As in, like, this is the moment where...
Yeah, I didn't like that.
I didn't like it either.
Yeah, because I thought we just had a moment of sincerity where the movie had told us that for Rita Wilson's character, motives matter, and he needs to do it because he wants to do it for someone else other than himself. And I thought that's what I was talking about earlier on, it being a good moment. And then they undercut it immediately with a moment where they're commenting on the fact that this is a character arc. And I thought, okay. If you guys are being ironic and you don't care, then why should I?
And even how the very last scene of the film, and this is like full spoilers because, this is what we're doing in this, is that we see where does Tom end up at the end of this film. All he wanted to do from when he got away was he just wanted to pay off his gambling debt and just get back home as quickly as possible and just be in the lap of luxury. But when he finally discovers that, when he finally basically conquers this world and kind of becomes king of the world and, defeats all the bad guys around him, what does he do when he's embedded in that village? Is he basically opens a casino and gambling joint, and it's going to be Lawrence's place, and he's now going to exploit the natives.
Isn't it charming? Isn't that so funny? Yeah,
such a lovely colonialist going to bring his nefarious ways, and he hasn't changed by the end of the film. We see that he's just, instead of being someone who has gambling is his problem and is his addiction, instead by the end of the film he's embraced it. He's become the king gambler of this whole country. It's not a nice arc.
This is why we focus on what we love on the podcast. I care about movies, and I care about them being the best that they can be. And I know how difficult it is to make a movie. And when I feel like people just have gone in all wrong-headed and they're kind of pissing about and they're putting out this shoddy product, I don't really get a kick out of it. I need to sort of feel like that somebody here cared and that it was a misfire, but there was something to root for. And this story just bugged me.
But hold on. Why sometimes I enjoy watching films that aren't great is that it's interesting to actually work out why doesn't this work. And I think from knowing that this film wasn't a comedy throughout the majority of its development, that it was only turned into a comedy at the last minute, makes a whole lot of sense.
It's like when a guy crashes a car into a lady pushing a pram, and then you learn that they were drunk, and you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Hey, I forgot to mention, who did the music for this? Did you notice? I
heard the familiar twangs of James Horner. Am I right?
And you'd be right. You'd be absolutely right. Definitely towards the second half of the film, you can hear those James Horner orchestral, big swelling sounds when things get dramatic and stuff like that. And
it doesn't save the movie.
It doesn't. But it was actually, that was one of the things that went, James Horner sounds.
I hope everyone got paid really well.
I'm sure they did. Yeah. I found, because I was trying to do research on this, and it just goes to tell the footprint this film has, because There really weren't any special features, any commentaries, very little written about this
good.
film.
Our podcast now will be out there for all time as a monument to this film.
I found an interview that Tom Hanks did back in the 80s promoting this.
Did he say I'm sorry in it?
He didn't say it because he was promoting it, Kevin, but it was a very 80s interview where the lady who was interviewing him was basically, "Oh, Tom, you're a superstar now. What do you do with all your money?" And it was the most direct, awkward question to ask a Hollywood star. And he just didn't know how to answer. He just went, "What do you mean? What do I do with all the money?" Yeah, you know what?
Hookers and blow, baby.
But he was lining, but it gave me a snapshot of where Tom Hanks was at the time, because he talked about all the projects he had coming out. So it was before, well before he had Jackie Gleason movie coming out, Nothing in Common. He was The Man with the One Red Shoe, which was also a flop that summer. That was a big flop for him that summer. He had this. The following year, Tom Hanks was in this film called Every Time We Say Goodbye, right? And it was a huge flop. It was a massive flop. So Tom Hanks was a bankable enough star because he, from the mid 80s on, he had big, and everything he made was glorious. And from the 90s, he was one of the big stars in the world. But in the 80s, if he didn't have big, things could have taken a different turn for Tom Hanks. That's all I'll say. This wouldn't have helped him. This film did not help.
He would have probably been a TV actor.
Probably, yeah, probably. Yeah.
And we never would have gotten to see Hooch dying in Turner and Hooch.
Oh, God.
The dog probably killed himself. I think that's what happened in that movie.
What a weird ending to a film, Turner and Hooch.
That whole movie is weird because it's a kid's film, but he's dealing with violent drug gang lord criminals.
Yeah.
It's like, and there's a lot of murder in that film. It's like,
I can still see in my mind's eye the squib going off on Hooch's chest when Hooch gets shot. Like, they show us the dog, the bullet penetrating the dog's torso.
That wasn't the squib.
They put him down on camera.
Rubber bullets.
It's movies, maybe. It's movies. Oh, man. Do I recommend people out there watching this film? Not really. If you're curious, you'll see enough if you look at the trailer on YouTube.
You've got Netflix. Put on Netflix. There's a load of stuff on Netflix.
But as a completionist exercise, I kind of liked having watched this film. Because it's John Candy. And I'm so glad that Rita Wilson and Tom Hanks
This film, didn't like you back.
No, it was a one-way. This definitely was a one-way. Oh, no, I'm not saying I liked this film. I thought it was, it kind of, I'm glad I watched it. I'm not recommending it.
It was grand. It was grand.
It was grand. It wasn't totally offensive. Okay?
No, it wasn't.
So I think we should wrap it up there, unless you've got anything else to add to this conversation, Kevin.
Tom Hanks, he is America's favourite movie star. And I don't think that America has watched all of his movies.
Here, do you want to know what Variety said about the film at the time? Variety said,
2 thumbs up.
Volunteers is a very broad and mostly flat comedy. The top line, Tom Hanks gets a few good zingers. This is a time when they said zingers, as an upper-class snob doing time in Thailand, but the promising premise and opening shortly descend into an unduly protracted tedium. I think that's fair enough.
Tedium is a great word for this. Yeah, it's a very tedious film.
The New York Times praised Nicholas Meyer for his steady directorial hand.
He knew them. He must have known the critic.
And the stylish, droll performance of Tom Hanks, about whom Goodman, they added, he is a centre of confidence amid the frantic goings-on, turning peril into opportunity with an accent and aplomb that are the birthright of an 8th generation born.
Aplomb? What's aplomb?
Aplomb. I'm saying aplomb. What did I say? Aplomb? I turned my P upside down. I have vertical dyslexia.
Okay.
I think we've covered Volunteers. I'm not recommending it.
So when it comes to whether we think you should revisit it or skip it, we're saying it's up to you. You do what you want to do. We can't save you from yourself.
We have to give some sort of suggestion.
You have to want to save yourself.
It's like coming to the end of a review, right? You're giving a review and it says, right, how many stars are you going to give it? Whatever you think yourself. That's effectively whatever you think yourself.
It's not that it's atrociously bad. It's just really boring and just,
tedium.
Yeah, and just wrong-headed.
Yeah.
And I just didn't like the social politics and rich, smarmy pricks going over to poor countries and taking advantage of an indigenous population. I just don't think is a good basis for a comedy when there's nothing underneath the character to give them any sort of humanity at all. It's just, isn't this guy a dickhead? Don't you love dickheads? There you go. Laugh it up, you dickheads.
Look how much of a dickhead he could be in the jungle to people who
in the rainforest.
Slice him. Yeah, or the side of a riverbank.
Yeah, in Mexico.
Hey, so I think we should wrap
Spin
it
the
there.
wheel. Spin the wheel.
I hope that you are going to pick a cracker because, oh my God, you have given me such a hard time on this one for picking this film.
It's your own fault.
Right? It's done. Okay, Kevin, your year. We're staying in the 80s, man. It's 1988.
Okay, 1988. I don't know anything about 1988. I was running truant around the streets of Cork, blowing in windows and robbing granny's purses and having a ball. Okay, 1988. I'll pick something that isn't offensive.
Okay, excellent. It's right. I'm looking forward to not being offended, Kevin. That's that's all I'm asking from you.
Good.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening.
And if you like this episode, oh God, I'm not going to ask you to rate and review us based on this episode.
Summer show. This is the summer show. This is us being on our summer holidays. We have got the sun cream on. We're relaxed. This is not.
I'm sunburnt. That's why I'm cranky. On Patreon, I'm much nicer. Okay, we'll see you next episode.
Rate and review us, and you can join us on Patreon for more stuff. All right. Good luck, everyone. Bye.
That was the end of the best bits.
The Best Bits podcast is produced by Will and Kevin.
All audio clips and music heard in this episode is the intellectual property of the respective copyright holders and no infringement is intended.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff.
If you have any notes, comments, scene suggestions, or just want to get in touch with us, email us at bestbitspodcast@gmail.com.
And here is a clip from the lads' latest Mini Bits bonus show. The full episode, plus 80 more, are available on their Patreon.
See ya, Mossy. I gotta go in and record another one of these fucking mini bits.
Oh, yes, this is all it.
I know. What are you doing?
Right now, on the Academy screener site, and I hit play because there's only a few films on it. For the first month or two, there's only like about less than 10 films on it. And Guy Ritchie's The Covenant is on here. So I hit play on that, and I'm hearing we're out in Afghanistan, and I'm hearing all the dirt, and I hear vehicles, and I hear the sound effects of characters walking. But when characters open their mouths, I don't hear any dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
there's no dialogue.
They've uploaded the wrong audio track. It's like that Tom Cruise trailer where it was just the sound effects.
Have you met an SP?
Yeah, and this film has been up on the screener site for a few weeks now, and they still have the wrong one here. Well, I tell you what films are actually up there for all Academy members to see, and to see what they've put up there.
But first of all, let's just throw to our theme. And I have to say, the feedback from my thank you ballad was quite fierce.
The power of Christ compels you!
So I asked Mossy, who is a friend of my dad's at the quiz, sing us a theme tune.
Oh.
So over to Mossy.
Hit the cards. I'm fine, I'll get it done in one take. It's the Mini Bits. Or podcast, what will they say? it will and Kevin Cock.
The best fucking podcast.
That'll do.
That'll do.
My God.
Thank you, Mossy.
You would make an angel weep. That voice would make an angel weep.
Telling you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Boolabus.
It only cost us 2 months patron money, so, you know.
Is that all? Money well spent in my eyes.
Yeah. I mean, you can't get much for €20. Will, you were telling me before the intro that you were looking at stuff on the Academy Screeners website.
The Academy Awards. So for official members, yes. So they don't send out DVDs anymore. So how you do all your streaming stuff is all via the Academy website. And the streaming season has begun, which is exciting. So it means for the rest of the year...
Did it ever end?
It does end. It does. After the Academy Awards, there's about 2 weeks, and they take all the films down, and then they begin again at the end of August, and they all start coming up. So it's a whole new collection of hopefuls.
So how many films are on there?
Right now, about 10. Actually, 10 exactly. I can tell you the 10.
Oh, go on, tell me.
John Wick 4.
For the Oscars. Oh, because there's like...
Yes, they're adding in stunt category, aren't they?
Are they adding it in? Is the stunt category being added?
I believe they're adding in some sort of stunt category.
Breaking news straight from an Academy member's mouth.
Because they're adding in stunt category, aren't they?
Slash film.
I don't know. Did I read this in an article? I feel they were.
I
felt they were.
Have long overlooked stunts, and my God, it's pure artistry.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly, well, these days, it's all fucking rubber computer generated avatars.
That's why we should that's why these people should be getting their Oscars when someone's actually gone out there. Yeah,
go back,
absolutely.
Go back and give it to your man from Mad Max who broke his legs.
Give it to Richard Farnsworth, who was a stuntman and starred in The Straight Story. Yeah, Richard Farnsworth was a career stuntman. Absolutely.
Wasn't that also the case with Machete? What's your man, Machete? Danny Trejo.
Danny Trejo.
Is
really?
It Trejo or Trejo?
I always call him Trejo. He just says, call me Danny.
I was going to say that back to you.
Nah.
I was like, just that.
Weird.
Because we just call him